Hi, everyone. Welcome to this new episode of featured interviews for KCrush American Magazine. I'm your host, film critic, and journalist, Carolyn Hines. And today I'm very happy to be joined by filmmaker Nelicia Low for her film Pierce, which will be screening at the 2024 Toronto Real Asian International Film Festival. And let me just say, this film, the ending, I'm not going to spoil it, but the ending. But this film is, I would call it a psychological thriller. But it's a psychological thriller about trust and betrayal between siblings, and about who should you trust? Should you trust your brother or should you trust your mother? And so the film centers around these two brothers, Zi-jie and his older brother, Zihan, who they both have a love of fencing. I think it's a love, I'm not sure. And the animosity and the mistrust and the want for love that develops between them when Zihan returns from detention after going away for killing someone during a fencing competition. But the real beauty of this film, I think, is in the performances, because in the performances, we as the audience know who to trust. We know that Zihan is not to be trusted. But I think the fact that the actor who plays Zi-jie wants to believe in his brother so much that we, the audience, kind of want to believe Zihan is better too. But then it's also like, no. And I have to just say that straight off the bat, because I think the performances of the lead actors, the two young men and the mom and the actress who plays the mom, does such a fantastic job in this film. And for you and Alicia, like the way you build tension and the way you build all of these conflicting emotions between the brothers is, I think, probably one of my favorite things about this film. But where there's a scene in a restaurant that we're going to discuss. I love that scene, the entire sequence. But first of all, thank you so much for joining me, Nelicia, to talk about this this film. I just love this film. So thank you so much for joining me.
No. Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine. Yeah.
Thank you. So, first, I like to ask my guests to say a bit about themselves, or what got them involved in filmmaking. So, for you, what inspired you to get into filmmaking?
I wanted to be a film director since I was 5 or 6.
Mm.
It was a kind of out of body calling. Um, so when I was very young, I don't know how to explain. It's one of those things that I think you can't really explain. But I do remember that I had a bit of a tumultuous childhood, and
Mm.
I just remember watching Pocahontas a lot, the Disney movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I just, something about that film, it's like, oh, listen to your heart, just do what you know is right, and don't the people around you are not necessarily correct.
Hmm.
And you have to, like, forge your own path. I think something about that spoke to me. So it's very strange. I always say that when I watch a movie that really speaks to me, I get this feeling that even though I'm the one watching the movie, I feel like I'm being watched by the movie. Like, it
Mm.
feels so personal to me. And that two-way connection is so strong. And I think that's why I knew I wanted to be a film director since I was like 5. It's a very, very early calling. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Pocahontas. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that Pocahontas inspires them, but
Because
I
no
totally
one
get
wants
it.
it to it. Yeah, but that's like because I was a kid. I'm not watching, like, Jim Jarmusch as a 5-year-old kid. It's Disney movies. Yeah.
I look Some of my favorite films of all time are Disney films. I want to say Pocahontas is one of my favorites for the music. The music in that film is
Yes.
amazing. But one of my
Amazing.
favorite Disney films is Mulan
Hmm.
and Hercules. I love Hercules,
Oh,
that particular brand,
interesting.
that particular style of
Once's
animation.
Hercules. You're very interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We don't
Why
get
did you like it?
huh?
Why do you like Hercules? I'm
I
curious.
love the music, and I
Ah,
love that Hercules, because when you read old very adaptations of the Greek mythology, like Hercules is depicted as, he's tough, he has all this trauma from his background, being raised by humans not knowing who his parents are. So that's a very, I think, if you people really think about it, that's a very relatable story where, like,
hmm,
teenagers, kids, once they really start to learn who they are, they start to pull
hmm,
away from their parents, they want to find their identities. But there's
hmm,
also the fact that this adaptation of the Hercules story kind of makes him goofy. He's kind of goofy, and and he has the horse Pegasus. I love that horse.
oh,
He has such attitude. I love that horse, seriously. And then there's the three muses. We don't have any other female characters like the three muses in any other in any other Disney animated film. And like just the music for them, like the composition and the arrangement of the music is like so good. Like I sing. I am the kind of person that I to this day still play Disney soundtracks when I'm cleaning the house. I'll go around
Oh,
I'll put on a
okay.
playlist on YouTube of Disney songs, and that's what I'm playing when I'm cleaning my house. So like I just
Oh,
love the music. But I totally get you like getting inspired by Disney, but I just thought it was funny that Pocahontas was the one to do it. But
oh, yeah, 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 yeah. I
but no.
remember the ending so clearly. It's funny you mentioned my film's ending because for me, the Pocahontas ending was just like incredible, like she says bye to John
Mm.
Smith and then she runs to the cliff and then the wind blows and then her hair blows and then she does that and then he does that from the boat, I just like,
Yeah. It's a very
yeah.
cinematic ending. It's like,
Very
yes.
cinematic, beautiful colors, beautiful like work on I mean, it was all hand drawn in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
beautiful.
I miss 2D animation. And the thing now that I'm thinking about it, Pocahontas water features heavily a lot in Pocahontas, and water features
Mm,
heavily a lot in this film.
yeah,
And
that's true. Yeah.
and wind as well. Like there's a scene when they're in the
Mm.
fencing gallery
Yeah,
and the wind
yeah,
starts
you're
to blow the
right.
curtains. I'm like, I can see the inspirations. I can see it.
Ah!
And the traumatic unknown ending, like what happens now? Like if you know the true story of the real girl, like you know that it did not end pretty for her. And
I know.
your fan
And a
is
lot
like,
of
what is
people have told me how inaccurate the Disney adaptation is. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But I just kind of see it for what it is, as
no,
like a
and that's correct. Like, like it did inspire like a lot of us, and like Disney films for those of us who are millennials, as people would say, Disney
mm,
films are a pivotal part of our childhood. As much as
yeah.
Terminator films were a part of my childhood, so was Disney cartoons, and it makes sense. It would somehow inspire our love of whatever it is we do. And in saying that, another aspect of um hmm, another aspect of Pocahontas that I'm actually going to use as a jump off point to talk about the film is the relationship between male characters. So in Pocahontas, there's this tension between John Smith and I forgot the
Nice.
name and the love interest. The
Oh, Cocoon.
Yes. So
Yeah.
and then there's also the father who's like, these white people, we cannot trust them. These white people are dangerous. And in your film, you have those three characters. You have Zi-jie and Zihan, and then you have the mother who's telling Zi-jie, your brother cannot be trusted. He is dangerous. So I
Mm-mm.
want us to talk about that. I want us to jump off talking about the film about that, about the dynamics of the relationship between these three characters, the mother and the two sons, because it's interesting that the mother knows not to trust Zihan. She's not, because I find sometimes in some films, they'll paint the mother as who's naive, like she wants to trust her son
Oh,
because he's her son or whatever. But your mom, your character, she's like, no, you are dangerous. I don't want you anywhere around me or my son because you are a detriment to us and to everyone. So talk to me
mm.
about just the dynamics of that, of creating these three characters.
Yeah, so I mean, the initial inspiration for the film, although the film has moved very far away from it, is there was an incident in 2014 when I was in
Mm,
Taipei. And there was this incident on the subway there where young man, went onto the subway train and with a knife and killed four people and injured many others.
mhm,
But his family, what struck me even more than the cruelty of what he did was his family's reaction, because there was a huge discrepancy in the reaction between his parents and his younger brother. So his parents went onto the streets of Taipei to beg the government to execute their son, whereas his younger brother went to the police station crying and saying that like my older brother could have never done this and he's innocent, and he gave his shoes to his older brother and everything. And that younger brother's reaction just reminded me a lot of my relationship with my older brother, because
mm,
when I was young, I didn't understand that my older brother was autistic. Because when you're the younger sibling, you just see your sibling as they're just your whole world. You don't process it in the same way as an adult, like your parents would. And I think that's what to me makes the sibling relationship so special. Because like if you look at my family, like my parents, they were already adults when they had to deal with an autistic son. But I was not an adult when, I grew up with my brother. So for me, it's just like, for example, I have so many memories of us that when I look back now are totally made up in my own mind. So for example, I remember my brother and I used to hold hands all the time. And I thought that he held my hand because he loved me. But the truth is that he never once willingly held my hand. And in reality, he really liked to, because autistic kids they like to run everywhere. So
Yeah, they don't like touch.
exactly, they don't like to be touched. So the reality is that I was grabbing onto his hand because I was worried he would get lost. So that sort of like self-delusion, that ability to lie to yourself so that you can believe that your older sibling loves you, is what Pierce is based on. And that's why the mom is the one that has seen the light, so to speak, and the younger brother has not. But at the same time, I think, it was really important to me, that the older brother is not black and white either. So when I worked with the actor, we worked very clearly on what his character was thinking 7 years ago during the incident, when he was young, during the start of the film, throughout the film. And something that I say a lot that I used when I worked with him is a quote from one of my favorite books. And the quote is, "As your lover describes you, so you are."
Yeah.
Because I think that that's really what his character is. I think he starts the film not caring or knowing what love is, but something about the way that, because we are what people see us to be. So I think something about the way that his younger brother idolizes him and believes him to be innocent and this perfect older brother sort of figure. I think at some point the character also starts to believe that. And that's why to me, the end, in a way, when he does what he does, if the younger brother did not finally tell him, you are a murderer, I also don't believe the ending would have happened. So to me, it's a tragedy, yeah.
It's almost like right up there with the Greek tragedy. So it's kind of fitting that we started talking about films like Pocahontas
Yeah.
and Hercules, because it's like
Hercules, yeah.
what happens. I even messaged my friends in Twitter and I said, I just watched this film and you would not believe this ending. I was just so like I was like, you would not believe. And I just told them and they were like, good gosh. I'm like, it's so good. But
Oh,
but first off, I want to okay, so you mentioned that the incident in 2014 in Taipei is what inspired you. Funny enough, I was actually going to ask you about that a little bit later because I interviewed a filmmaker. His name is Liu An, and he did a film called Goddamn Monsieur in 2021, but I interviewed him in 2022, and it's a film about that incident, that
oh.
incident. But his film actually focuses on the effects of the incident on the people who were attacked, on the bystanders, the people who were
Mm,
watching. Whereas your
mm,
film kind of looks at an incident from the very personal perspectives of
mm,
the perpetrator and his family, and how what he did affected his family. So I think it's interesting that I've seen two films about this series, but told from different perspectives. And I
mm,
think it's interesting that you said, okay, I'm going to make a film kind of like, what if an incident like this, how would it impact the family?
mm,
And I think then making it about two brothers who are struggling with, one wants to be believed and the other one wants to believe, but the
mm,
thing that brings the doubt is such a horrific act.
mm,
Like what Zihan does is such a horrific act, and like he takes this sport, fencing, which
mm,
came out of French aristocracy. They took this very violent and made it into a sport. And it's kind of fascinating when you think about it. It's like this is such a violent act, kind of like shooting and archery. Made it into
mm,
these competitive sports, but he he takes this, and one of my favorite things I think about this film is that you use fencing to show his true nature.
mm,
Because for Zihan, he's very young, but he's very persuasive. He learned from very early that he is able to manipulate people. All he has to do is talk to them a certain way, make them feel sorry for him. He's a sociopath, straight up sociopath. And he's so
mm,
manipulative, and he knows this.
mm,
But people believe him once he's off the map, especially not adult. Yeah, I would say adults. He's able to manipulate adults, especially women. But once you put him on the map, his true nature comes through because he can't hide it. He can't hide his
mm,
aggression in his act. So I want to talk about Zihan first, about just like building such a complex and I think violent character, but his violence is so well hidden that
Mm,
Zi-jie, one of the reasons he doesn't want to believe that his brother is as violent as he is that he can see the potential for love that Zihan has for him. You know, but he doesn't
mm.
also, he also so young, he doesn't realize when he's being manipulated. So talk to me first about building Zihan as a character.
So, the only thing I kept from my personal life was that the younger brother and I both didn't know what our older brothers were thinking.
Mm,
So that kind of yeah, because when you do anything autobiographical, and unfortunately all my films are very autobiographical, it's important to step away from your own reality so that you can get closer to your own emotional truth.
mhm,
So that's what I kept from it, and that's how he became such a manipulative, psychopathic sort of character. So I did a lot of research into psychopaths, and you brought up before why the water theme appears in the film. That's also partly to do with some of the research I did. So firstly, just to go back to that water thing for a while, it was important actually in the Chinese characters of their names and even the name of the school. There's the water symbol in all their names. So I made sure to keep that throughout the film. So part of the research about psychopaths, there were a few things that for some reason were connected to water. So the
mhm.
first thing is that a lot of Zihan's character is actually based on Ted Bundy. So I'm sure you know him, you know
Yeah,
his
he's known to be extremely
ex
persuasive, especially to
exactly
women. He was able to
exactly.
fool a lot of
Yeah.
women.
Yeah. So for me, I read the autobiography of Liz, who is his long-term girlfriend, and it's very chilling because the whole book is about how she does not understand why he left her alive. Because
Mm,
she fits the profile of all the women that he killed. And they were together for years, and basically, after they broke up, he went to prison and everything. She stopped visiting him because she had to cut him off from her life to, save herself. And the day before he died, he sent her a letter. And in this
mm.
letter, he wrote, I know you're always going to wonder if my love for you is true, but I want you to know that it is. And you don't know, I mean, I love your expression.
Beyond final manipulative act, you know, like he's just,
That's
I
what
just
her
gotta,
daughter
he's like, I need to get the last word in.
get her one last time before I die.
Yeah.
But it's such an open, ambiguous thing because on one hand there's that, and that's how I feel about the Zihan character in my film as well. Because on one hand there's that, but on the other hand, his younger brother's alive. So it's and she's alive. So it's like what, it's really it's strange. So I don't really think things are ever that black or white. But in the same book, she mentions that there was an incident that they were canoeing
Mm,
and he pushed her into the water like in jest, and waited a long time before pulling her out. And she said when she was struggling in the water, she saw this look in his eyes and it just freaked her out. And then I also did research. So that was like one thing that number one was connected to water, and number two, I based a lot on my film on. And then another thing about Zihan was that I did a lot of research into psychopathic children.
mm,
Also helped my research with the mom's character because I need to understand why would a mother say, no, I can't deal with this. I'm done. And it's really sad because there's this institution I read about in the States. It's for kids. It's for kids that start killing animals when they're very young and they start
yes.
harming all their siblings and their parents don't know what to do. And they send their kids to this psychiatric center. And I read about all the therapists and how they feel so hopeless because they say that, with a regular person, if you punish them, or a
Mm,
regular kid, if you punish them, they'll stop doing the thing that they're punished for. But with psychopathic kids, they don't. It does not
yeah.
work. Punishment does not work. The only thing that could work is a sort of reward. Like you tell them you don't do this, the reward is better, but that's really difficult to get across. So again, there was an incident. Oh, and then there's a lot of things about how um in psychopaths, the thing that would help them the most is something that no therapist can help them with, which is like will. It's human will. You
Yeah.
have to want to change. And if not, there's almost nothing that can be done. There's no therapy, no amount of therapy can help you. So it's really hard. All the therapists that I read about all just said this is just like the hardest thing to overcome. And again, there was a father who was quoted in the article I read that saw he had two sons, and then the older one was in a facility, came home for like a holiday or something, and he saw him pulling the younger son out of his family swimming pool. So he was very shocked. The father was very shocked when he saw that, and yeah, so it sort of gave him hope. So again, the water motive came up again. So again, that's why it's in the film. But yeah, so Zihan's character was based a lot on that. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is with I've watched not only just like dramatic films and fictional films, but I've watched like a lot of documentaries about about people like this who are sociopaths and psychopaths. And what the thing is about them is that there is, especially in children, I always tell people when it comes to like horror films and thrillers, the characters that scare me the most is kids. Because kids, people are our natural inclination is to protect children.
Yes.
But when there's a child that something is just telling you, I can't trust this child, it might be better not to save this child. Because like I always say, when I watch a horror film, if there's a kid, I don't trust the kid. I don't trust. I don't trust. And one thing for that is because when there are kids who are like that, who that switch for empathy, that switch for compassion does not exist. I think children have the penchant to possibly be more, I would say dangerous, but also dangerous, not only because of what they can do physically, but what they can do to people emotionally, because people doubt themselves for mistrusting a child. Like for the mom, I can imagine for Ai-Ling, I can imagine as she's raising these two children, she sees the potential for danger in her son. She sees the potential for danger in Zihan. And as a mother, she's conflicted about, why don't I trust my own child? Why do I fear my own
Yeah.
child?
Yeah.
And then when Zi-jie comes along, she's like, I have to protect my one son from
Yeah.
another. So there's this conflict. So for
Yeah.
people who have to work with these kids, there is that conflict. They're like, this is a child I'm supposed to, my job as a human being is to protect children, but I see the danger that this child poses. So like there is that conflict, and that you bring that on in the film, because she's a mother. She's like, I want him to be something completely different. Like she tells people that he's away studying medicine. And I thought it was interesting that not only did she choose to lie, I could understand why she chose to lie, because like he would be a social pariah, and like she and Zi-jie would be snubbed because of that. But I was just thinking, I would have said, why didn't she just say he died? That was cool. And the reason I said that is because like she painted the story of her son is away studying medicine. And I'm like, people are going to eventually ask, where's the graduation? When is he going to graduate? Or if you're going to graduation for your son's medicine coming from medical school.
She'll review it after the wedding. Yeah.
Right. But then I thought it was interesting that you chose medicine, and he said he wanted to be a pediatrician because he like the first tenet of medicine is first do no harm. Doesn't know how not to do harm, And then
you think that the mom, you understand the mom's character, because actually a lot of the comments I get are, why is she so cruel to her? But I think a lot of those people are coming from the place of they didn't believe that he was a psychopath. They believed that he became one because of the mom.
No, he was a born psychopath. And I say that in all seriousness, and like because also, and like one of the other reasons children scare me in some aspects. I've worked with children almost my entire life. I worked, my first job out of secondary school back home in Barbados was at a day nursery. I worked there for just over a year.
Cool.
Right. I worked with preschoolers, and I worked with the brand new babies and toddlers. And then here in Canada, when I moved here to Canada, I worked for 10 years at a junior public school. So I worked as a lunch supervisor and a classroom assistant with kids. And I've had kids tell me some really strange things. And like the school that I worked at in the area is predominantly Asian, of both South Asian, Southeast Asian, and East Asian. And a lot of the kids that I worked with, the classroom were first generation, like Chinese, Taiwanese, or Hong Kong immigrants. Their parents immigrated, so they're first or second generation. and they're the toddlers, the kindergarteners. And I've had kids say some really strange things to me. One of them that really sticks out to my in my mind is this little girl with all seriousness, holding a fork in her hand, looked at me and said, "Ooh, you look like chocolate. Do you think you taste like chocolate?" I'm like, "You're not gonna get a chance to find out." She didn't in a threatening way, but the way she said it with the fork, she was eating her lunch. So she just had her fork in her hand. And I was like, "Little girl, you are not." It
Oh my God, that's so creepy.
was so, and it was like, I don't know that the teacher came in the room and she's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "This child just said I look like chocolate and she wanted to know if I taste like chocolate." And I'm like, and she was like, I'm like, my eye on that one.
Oh my God.
It has stayed with me. I don't remember I got like here to here. And I laughed, but I was just like, want to know. I'm like, "You're not gonna get a chance to find out if I taste like chocolate." So that
My God.
so like children can be unintentionally scary.
Yeah.
But I totally related to the mom of that. Like she was not cruel. She's not only protecting Zi-jie, but in a way, she's in her own way, she's trying to protect Zihan because
Mm,
she knows that Zi-jie is a trigger for him.
mm,
She knows that
mm,
Zi-jie and the fencing is
mm,
where his animosity comes out. He can't hide it for very long. So she's like, "I'm
mm,
gonna send him somewhere far." And
mm,
it's not she's completely abandoning him because she was paying for his transportation. She was gonna help him set up with a job and everything. But she's just like, "I'm protecting him and I'm protecting society from him, but I'm also
mm,
protecting myself, my child." Like she was not cruel at all.
mm.
She
I'm
saw
glad you think so.
he was.
Happy to hear. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm happy to hear that. I think my film played in some South American festivals and no one had that issue. Everyone was like, mother knows best.
Right? Like she does. She does. She saw her son grow into this monster. She like nothing she if anything, everything she would have done was to try to stop him from becoming that. But
Mm,
then she realized she can't. Like, you can't come back from murder. You
mm,
can't. Right.
yeah.
And then we talked a bit about Zi. So now talk to me about Zi-jie, the complex one. The one that frustrated me a lot. I had sympathy for him because I can understand why he wants to believe his brother loves him
Mm,
and he's
mm,
not understanding why,
mm,
because he's turned this memory and distorted it as a way of protecting himself because he can't imagine that the brother that he looks up to, the brother he's trying to emulate, with the fencing, could want to hurt him. And so he's built up this idea in his head, but he saved me. And the mom is like, "Yeah, because I told him to. Like, if I didn't come up, you would be dead." But
mm,
he's not getting that. But he's just also very naive. And
mm.
and the way he frustrated me. I'm not gonna lie. I was just like, "Child, boy, get a clue. What are you doing?" I was like, the guy turned up at your school in your uniform, red flag, symbol. I'm like, alarms go. How did you get in my school? Why are you holding conversation with someone who sneaks into your school? You're putting everyone. So talk to me about Zi-jie. As you can tell, I clearly had a lot of fun watching this film. If I was in, I'd love to watch this film in the cinema because it would have been a trip. But working with Amis Asufulu about
Mm,
for this character because he is something else for more.
mm, mm. With Suzia's character, as I said, it's really just based on me, really,
Mm.
the part that I mean, in my real life, I am easily gaslit, unfortunately. I am like that. It has happened multiple times. Like every time it happens, I'm like, I guess that's the character. I'm like, I couldn't have written something more autobiographical or true to life. Um, yeah, I mean, for me, when I worked with Fu, he was a new actor when I met him. I was fresh out of quarantine, so because I shot the film during COVID. So the moment I came out of quarantine, the first meeting I had was with him. And he walked in and I thought it was going to be so difficult to find that the right actor for that character. And I thought it would be so easy to find the actor for the older brother, but in the end it was the opposite because right out of quarantine, Silfu walked in and his whole vibe was already right. Of course, I put him through so many auditions to make sure that, by the time we were done with all the rehearsals and the acting classes, that he would be ready for the role. Um, but what really sold me on him was that he really understood the final decision that the character makes for his older brother. And I think that's something that for many people they don't understand it. And it's my job and his job to make them, feel, at least feel for the younger brothers. But yes.
I know I understood the decision he made,
Yeah.
but it's just like, really, my guy. And I think that's a testament both to you and to his acting, because
Mm,
if you have a character like that played by an actor who doesn't understand completely the
mm,
motivations of his character, there
mm,
would be something lost in transition, in translation of getting over to the audience. Like I understood because everything that he did up to that point,
mm,
not only just the things he says, but the way his body moves and the way he put his performance, physical performance of the character, the emotional performance. You as us as the audience is saying, why would you? But then when you think about who this character is, it makes sense because right up until the very last shot, he's still trying to believe Z had to be this thing that he built up in his mind.
mm,
So that's a testament both to your direction and in working with Chufu, because it's just like the character wouldn't work any other way. The film wouldn't work any other way. And
mm,
and honestly, I just have to say that ending kind is probably the most one. And I watched Heretic this year, and I'm saying that film, your ending is one of the most drop jaw moments I've seen all year. And like, but I want now to talk about the technicalities of this film, because I think the technicalities of this film work really well with the emotional aspects. And we need to talk about technicality. We've talked about the water aspect and what water means in this film. I want to talk about shot composition and cinematography, because fencing focuses is such a central part of this film. Fencing, the way you use fencing to tell us, the audience, who these characters are. Like as I mentioned, fencing shows the aggression, that hidden danger that Zihan has. But Zi-Jie's style of fencing is very hesitant. He's not very confident. Like he's always trying to dodge the attacks. Very offensive. You can't dodge the attack. You have to meet your opponent head on. But he only begins to really become an attacker when Zihan turns up and starts to teach him his way of fencing. And I love the dialogue that you put in this film for those instruction scenes, because the first one right off the bat, I got like he's teaching Zi-jie how to not only be aggressive but how to be manipulative as a fencer.
mm,
He's teaching Zi-jie how to make his opponent go on the attack in a way that they shouldn't in fencing, because fencing is also considered a sport of gentlemen, and like you're not supposed to be extreme, just manipulative that way in that sport. So talk to me about working with, I would say, the fencing instructors that you worked with, and coming up with just the dialogue and the composition of those shots, because they're really fascinating, just like getting to see who these characters are through.
So I used to be a national fencer for Singapore.
Oh,
Yeah, and fencing wasn't in the script at first. So it was I wrote the script for about 5 years, and fencing only entered the story in year 3 of writing. And
oh,
it was because fencing is a strategy-based sport, and it is something that people that are really, really smart would excel at. So it was only when I created the character of Zihan and he became someone that was really smart and really manipulative, and he know what you're going to do before you do it, that I thought, you know what, he'd be a really, really good fencer. So actually for me, it wasn't so much about aggression. It was more
mm-hmm.
about strategy. He's really good at what he does. He knows how to get Zi-jie to give him money if he wants. He knows how to get things done his way. And that really, yeah. So then once fencing came to the picture, when I started my thinking about the shortlist with Mihao, the first thing I did was that I chose the 1.66 aspect ratio, because to me, I think when people think about fencing, if you're not a fencer, you think about the screen in this like widescreen way because you're thinking about the piste and it's very objective. But to me, the film is very subjective. And actually, as a fencer, what you see is your opponent and the distance between the two of you. And that's why the 1.66 aspect ratio made the most sense to me. And then what else is that to say about fencing? I mean, the actors had to train a lot. I put actual fencers into the film. Like, so the girl that acts as the fencing coach was my opponent last time. Like, we used to compete against each other. So yeah, the entire Taiwanese fencing community helped me a lot with the film. I think they're all in the film as a fences. Yeah.
No, I love those sequences. Because, and I wanted to ask you about this specifically because I find that every time Zihan is in the fencing gallery, he's covered. He's wearing the mask, he's wearing uniform like everyone else. He looks just like every other student. But there's this, I was wondering if I'm imagining it, but I got this sense that because I think fencers have to be so aware of each other. As you said, they're always aware of their opponent, like they read body language very well. You have to be able to read body language. So you have to know. I've never fenced, but I'm the kind of person when I used to watch it's a lot. I used to like kind of do research on the sports and stuff. I know for fencing, they have to read each other's body language very well in order to figure out what the next move would be. And I got the sense that anytime he was in the fencing gallery, the others around would somehow get more tense. I noticed the tone of the film shifted every time he turned up in those scenes. Like it became more tense, and the other actors it was just like, are they being purposely directed to be more tense and more wary? I got a bit more heightened, got a bit more volatile every time he turned up. So I wanted to ask about the scenes with those, because I was just like, am I imagining that? Where like they're sensing this dangerous opponent where his brother, whereas Zi-jie doesn't.
Oh, um, I had like some of the extras sort of admire his fencing skills for sure. So it was, I think what you were probably seeing is like this
Yeah, they'd
admiration.
watch him a lot. They'd be
Yeah.
watching him. And
Oh,
another thing, another technical aspect with regards to the set composition, I noticed you use poles a lot to block the characters off. Like there'll be scenes where Zihan is teaching Zi-jie and they draw behind the pole. Can't see
mm,
them, but they can see
mm,
each other. And then there's other
mm,
scenes when they're in the fencing gallery where the camera moves. Instead of the camera being in front of them, moving with them, our view of them is obstructed because the camera is actually moving further back and behind the poles and stuff. So I wanted to ask you about those choices of using like the structural poles of the buildings to obscure our view of the characters.
mm. The entire sprinkler scene, where they're hidden behind the pillars, the whole scene was really so basically when, the script was ready, the first thing that me and my DOP and my art director decided on was that the whole film would have the sense of like it being a dream, because it's what
Mm.
Zi-jie wishes his brother would be. Like, oh, this amazing guy who's not a murderer, who cares about me, who's coming to school to train me because he cares about me. So it made sense that a lot of the scenes between them would have this sort of like dreamlike and like overly beautiful quality. So with the sprinkler scene that you just mentioned where they hid behind the pillars, so my art director came up with the idea for the sprinklers, and then my DOP lit that scene in this really like beautiful, surreal sort of way. So it feels like it's glowing. And so, little details like them hiding behind the pillars, it just adds to the surrealism of the scene, yeah, which I think is really important to and that scene I don't know if you realize, but when Zihan runs off, there's also I mean it's like a long take, and then finally after he runs off, it cuts back to Zizie's reaction, looking at his older brother and wondering if what happened was real. And like when I
Yeah.
was editing the film with my co-editor Eric Mendelsohn, the thing that we tweaked it for that moment was that we cut from the wide shot to Zizie's face and then back to the
Mm.
shot with the frame empty and the brother not there, having had run off. We cut back to the empty frame quickly so that it would feel like he just disappeared, not that he actually ran off. So everything in that scene was, and then the sound design, he added this like echo at that, you mentioned the wind before. So everything just was to add to this sort of surrealism of that scene. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the way this is edited is so that's what because you do wonder like was his brother even really there, and the
Yeah.
only time we're even aware that he was there is because we hear like the voice of like the headmaster of the school say, you boys get better go better go to sleep, it's late, because without that we would never know. But even then if she has said boy, you wonder was it she heard someone, but you're wondering did she hear two or did she hear one, and I was even beginning to wonder is like Zi-jie kind of like disassociated from reality, where he's
Mm,
doing
mm,
both characters, you know, because
mm,
I could see it working where he is practicing doing the fencing and it's happening in real life, but he's fighting an invisible opponent. Like his brother isn't really there, but he's imagining that he's there, so he's doing all two sides. So I was just like, I thought for a moment, I was just like, he's losing touch with reality completely.
mm.
Um, and so then one of the other
I've heard
scenes
that
that
some people
I
say
think
that.
it's the teacher.
No, the disassociation, like they think that maybe he wasn't real. I've heard people say that about the film, like they just think it's
Yeah. I was wondering like if he is really there and like he like ZJ is completely disassociated from reality and is just and it, playing both parts. Like he's kind of like doing a pantomime of his brother because he's like he himself could possibly be psychologically disturbed too, and that would
Mm,
explain his extreme naivety and the way he behaves. I want to talk about what I think is my all-time favorite scene in this film, and this is the dinner scene where again ZJ
oh,
makes extremely bad decision and invites his brother to dinner with their mom and their mom's
that's
fiance
my
and his family.
favorite scene as well. Okay, I'm
I love
glad you
that scene.
mentioned.
I
Yeah.
love that scene because
Yeah.
as Zihan is spinning this tall tale of his life as a medical student, you know, working with pediatric patients, and he says, "I love working with children. I want to inspire children, and all of this." The camera focuses between him, Zi-jie watching him, and this little boy who is Uncle Wang's nephew, and
Yeah.
I kudos to that child actor. He actually looks very familiar to me because I'm like, I'm sure I've seen this show before. But
Uh,
I think he did such a fantastic job in this sequence because his 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 emotions, everything that he's bringing forth in this character, kind of counterbalances ZJ's emotions, you know, because as
mm,
he has talking, ZJ at first begins like, "Oh, isn't my brother so impressive? Like everyone is falling in love with my brother, so this could work. You know, we could be one big happy family." He has this
mm,
light in his eyes, but we're looking at the little boy, and the little boy is like, "Something is off. Something is
mm,
very wrong here." You know, and again, this is again where like the score and the tone of the film, the tension just keeps getting tighter and tighter and tighter as
mm.
Zihan tells this more elaborate story. And he's just going on and building and building and building. And then the climax hits and the little boy starts to cry. I was like, yes, it
Yeah.
makes sense that he would cry because he senses evil. Because children are extremely good judges of character. I always say trust children, even though they scare me, but I trust them. Animals. Animals know who to trust and who not
Yes,
to
yeah,
trust. Children
yeah,
are the exact same way. If a child says, I don't like this person, listen to
yeah.
that child because they don't like them for a reason. You know,
Yes.
so when this little boy is observing, he's watching and he's just getting more scared as ZJ's like becomes more a thing, and he's just getting and I'm like, he sees evil in the room. You know, he's like Haley Joe Osment, I think like I see he was like, I
Yeah,
see evil.
yeah.
So talk to me about that scene because I just love the again, you have three characters who are like a triangle. There's Zihan, Zi-jie, and this little boy, and like they're
Yeah.
making this perfect triangle of how this scene is structured and emotional and
Mm,
tonal weight. It just like builds and
mm.
builds. I'm like, frame this scene. I'm like, frame it right here.
Oh, thank you so much. That really means a lot to me because it's my favorite scene in the movie too. So, you know, the first version of that scene was terrible because, you know, the kid cried in that scene as well, but the brother was in the very first version of that scene, I wrote him as coming to the dinner to terrorize people by saying a bunch of crazy shit. Then I was
uh,
like, no, that's totally wrong. It should be the opposite because this is about Zi-jie and how he sees his brother. And to me, that scene is like the start of the descent into like, ah, okay, you are manipulative. You know, you are charming. You have the ability to lie out of your butt, you know.
yeah, like out of his ass straight off.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, I imagine the scene to be a bit like, you know, how in alien movies, the aliens are like dressed in human costumes and only the dogs and cats can can like they can do it. So yeah, so it was based on that. And my personal favorite shot of the whole film, it's an editing thing because, you know, I edited the film myself with Eric Mendelsohn. And so my favorite personal cut of the film is there's a close-up of the kid crying and then a wide shot of the kid running to to his mom, and then the next cut is the three shot of Zihan, mom, and Zi-jie. And to me, it's like this is the Adams family. It's like dun dun dun. You feel it because like you have this guy in the middle who's like, oh crap, and then you have Zi-jie who's like, what is going on? And the mom is like, I knew this would happen. So I just thought that shot was so funny. When I worked with Zihan on the set, I remember we did 3 takes. So the first 2 takes of his reaction to the kid crying was good. He's just like upset that he made the kid cry. He was like, oh crap. But then I had like an idea for the third take because I was like, I think it could be better. So I went to him and I said, do you think this is the first time you've made a kid cry? And he started laughing because you can imagine like everywhere this idiot goes, kids are like, ah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, oh my God, get him away from me, like screaming, they're crying, they're pulling their parents away. So he laughed, and then the third take, instead of just being like, oh my God, there's a kid crying, it's like, oh crap, a kid is crying again, and it's a very different reaction to the first two. So that was the take that we ended up with. And yeah, the kid cried in 1 take, and then as he was crying, we moved the camera. So he was a great,
Brilliant.
yeah,
Brilliant. He was
great.
brilliant. Like, yeah, both him and Yu-Ning Tsao did a
Yeah,
fantastic job because they counterbalance each other. And
yeah,
and there's another scene I wanted to ask you about. So
yes.
it is so uh Zi-jie has a crush on a fellow athlete,
Yeah.
Jing
Wait, yes.
yeah, Jingwei, and I love this character because he provides a softness
Yes.
for ZJ that he can't get from Zihan. But Zihan, as being a psychopath and a sociopath as he is, he's very observant of people, and he reads people extremely well. So he immediately, when he's spying on them, he immediately sees that, oh, there's someone who has a romantic interest in my brother.
Yeah.
And I immediately got afraid because I was just like, oh, he sees competition. He sees
Mm,
someone who I can use to manipulate my brother. And
mm,
like he takes Zi-jie to this gay bar because he's just like, oh, people will think, oh, he's showing that he's really supportive. I was like, no, this is actually another
yeah.
manipulative tactic
Yeah.
because he sees that his brother is gay and he doesn't have a problem with that, but he sees this potential relationship as a way to manipulate his brother because
Yeah.
he says, oh, like Jingwei, he likes you, and I think you like him too. And anyone would look at it and say, oh, look, he's being so supportive.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah.
no, like this is not supportive. He's
He's,
trying
he's
to
thinking about something,
I'm like,
something
he's
up
trying
his
to
sleeve.
ingratiate himself into that moment because something that I think you do with this film is there's a scene where Ai-Ling and Zi-jie are arguing. And
Mm,
he's saying, I'm not going to stay away from him. I
mm,
want to be, you can't stop me from being around him. And again, context, social context. If this film wasn't about Zihan, anyone watching this again would think, oh, his mother has a problem with him having a homosexual relationship because the dialogue can be very ambiguous in that way. And I just love how you wrote this script. And it's ambiguous in that it could be used as though he's talking about Jingwei, he's referring to her wanting him to stop from being around Jingwei because she doesn't approve of that. And
mm,
so you have that scene that then he's in the gay bar, and I'm just thinking, this is how Zihan is. He's manipulative, but he's trying to build this trust between them because he knows that the mother doesn't want Zi-jie around him. But he can
mm,
extend that and say, Mom doesn't want you around Jingwei, so therefore Mom is the person we can't trust. Talk to me
mm.
about that sequence, because I'm just like, look at how this guy is using any and everyone in his life to manipulate his brother. And I think the reason he's doing it is because he sees Zi-jie as competition, as a fencer.
Mm. Yeah, so the gay bar thing, I mean, when I wrote that bit about him discovering that his younger brother's gay, obviously, for him, for his character, it's something that's very, I would say the first thing he just thinks it's funny because he's an asshole, he's just like, oh, this is something I know that he doesn't know. So let me see what I can get out of it. And but the ironic thing about him doing that is that it does help
Yeah.
Zizier. It does help him come out of the closet. It helps him get closer to the guy that he does like too. So it's one of those things that like it's an act of ambiguity, and you don't know if it's out of it. But at the same time, I don't think that this character is doing it completely out of evil. Like, I think there is something, because to me, as I said before, at the very end of the film, before the massacre happens, Zi-jie says to Zihan, "You are a murderer."
Mhm.
And it's like, if he didn't say that, would it have happened? Maybe not, you know? And the reason why that line affected him so much, Zihan so much, is because he doesn't understand that he has become attached to his younger brother as well.
Mhm.
His own psychopathic way, he starts the film not knowing or caring about what love is, but as the younger brother idolizes him, and as they build up this relationship, and he takes him to a gay bar and he trains him, he starts to connect to his younger brother too, and he starts to rely on his younger brother in a way that he didn't realize that he would need. He didn't realize that he needs this kind of
Mhm.
idolization in his life, and that's his own tragedy. He thought, I'm invincible. I don't need anyone. I'm alone. I'm always alone. So even though the gay bar scene, obviously, when I worked with the actor, with Yu-Ning, it was always a balance between the psychopathic, very evil kind of like kind of thing, but also like there's this part of him that even in the pre-production, like when we were doing rehearsals, I had a month of rehearsals with the actors, and there were scenes that we didn't just do the scenes where the brother's doing like, playing games with his younger brother that are not dangerous. It wasn't just those scenes. We also did the scenes where maybe something bad happened to the younger brother, and Zihan would do something out of some force. Because even at the end, when we worked on like why did he pull his younger brother out of the river, me and Zihan, when when we worked on it, it's like there's some things that are a force that are beyond our control, and
Yeah.
we don't know what that is. And I think that is not just for Zihan's character, but it's also for Zijie's character.
Mhm.
There's a force in him that is just connected to his older brother, and it's love. It's some kind of like, and I think for me in my personal life and in making this film, with Zijie's character arc, and my own, acceptance of my brother's condition and not knowing if how he would ever feel about me ever because of his condition, is that the strange thing is that my love for him, that is all based on lies, you know, it doesn't change, which really asks the question, what is love and how does the truth affect it, if at all? Is it
Mhm.
a force that we just can't control? So I think in terms of the question you asked with Zihan and the gay bar and everything that he does, I think there is something that is there that he
Mhm.
doesn't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
they're two very complex characters, and I love characters like this. They're not, as you said, they're not black and white. They sit very, very in the gray. One is just more light gray, and the other one is just more dark gray.
Yes. Very close to black. Very close. Yeah. Yeah.
But when you get to the ending, I'm like, I don't think you can get any more black than what happens at the end. I think, oh my god, the decision he made. I'm like, I, why would you do that? Like letting him go free. That how does that help him? You're putting everyone around him in danger because that flip has been permanently set in place, and like he's not gonna go back.
Yeah.
But then I was
Yeah.
just thinking, I'm sure they're gonna do DNA analysis, fingerprint analysis. They'll do like camera work and see, okay, he was over here when this started, so it can't be him. And then the mother's gonna be like, my son is a killer. He has a record. Let's look for him. So the ending to me, like beyond what we see in the film, is that he's gonna realize that was a very stupid mistake, and like the truth will be eventually found out. But in that moment, in that film, the scene, the water again, where he's pulled out of the water, but is like they're grown up. I was just again, I love it, but I would just that ending. My God.
Actually, I would say that, the way that I edited the ending with Eric, the way that it starts, and the reason why the curtains even blow, and then it becomes this like montage this montage of scenes at the end. I actually intended for it to be sort of like, because as I said, the whole film is based on a dream. And I think that at the end, as long as Zi-jie wants to save his brother, that's his character arc. It doesn't really matter if he did it or not. So for me,
Yeah, he could have done it in his mind.
maybe that was the
Um,
intention. It
I'm
could
gonna
have.
believe that. That's what I choose to believe. But I refuse to believe that what happened is really happened. That the choice he makes really happened because just
Yeah, yeah,
logistically, like in
of
real life,
course.
I'm
Yeah,
like there'll be
yeah.
investigations. Like they'll eventually find out it's not you.
That's
But
why I added the red curtains blowing, and then that's why we added in sound design that the curtains actually have no sound, and we did
yeah.
it to add this like eerie feeling. Like, why is there no sound? The curtains
Mhm.
are blowing, and then that's why he also added echoes to their voices to make the sense of like this is like it's happening in heaven or something. It's not real. Yeah. So that was why I
Heaven or
did.
purgatory, probably purgatory. But
Yeah, 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 yeah.
we're gonna wrap it up. But this has been such a fun conversation. Oh my god, this is such a fun conversation. Thank you so much for taking talk with me and Nelicia about this film. Oh my gosh. Agree. Honestly, truly, I truly enjoyed this film, and if this is a film
Much.
that I would love to watch in a cinema, because just to hear people's reactions
I
to
think
it.
it's playing in Toronto soon.
Yeah, it's gonna be showing for the religion festival. So I'm gonna go to that. Make sure I go to that screening.
Oh, great. Oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank
Oh,
you.
for sure. I have to watch the cinema. And plus, I think because I watched it on my laptop, so I'm sure the with regards to the cinematography, like that scenes, the curtains, a lot of it would look
Mhm.
really great on the big
Yeah,
screen.
sure.
So
Yeah.
definitely, but yeah, no, congratulations to make it for I think make it such a fantastic film. Like congratulations, yay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that ending.
Please review the next one. It's set in San Francisco. It's in English and Cantonese, and it's a musical.
Your
Throwback.
next film?
What's this? Yeah.
What's that? What's the name of that one? Is it's not
I'm
yet,
still
right?
no, 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 no. I'm still writing the script. It's early, early, early on, but it's called Duet. Yeah,
What?
it's about Cantonese opera.
Ooh,
It's set in San
fascinating.
Francisco. It's mostly in English, but with some Cantonese as well. But yeah,
Ooh,
um,
fascinating.
yeah, because me and my co-writer Pierre, and actually one of the influences that we started writing it with was Pocahontas.
There she is again.
There she is again. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
and I didn't mention it, but there's another film I think you would probably like find interesting to watch. I actually
Hmm.
interviewed the filmmaker earlier this year at Sundance. It's another film. But this one is set in Beijing and
Uh-huh.
is by a director called Jian Lin, and it's a film called A Brief
Oh,
History of a Family, and
hmm.
fencing also features in that film.
I know. I heard. Yeah.
And yes, I think your two films would complement each other
Oh, okay,
very
okay,
well
okay.
because
Hmm.
like I don't know I this is two times in 1 year I've seen two films about fencing and I can't remember the last time I watched a film with fencing, so I kind of see that as kind of like meant to be.
Mm.
But thank you so much, Nelicia, and I know it's late, so I hope you have a good night and you
So
have a good festival season.
much. Thank you. Thanks for the interview, for inviting me. I really appreciate it. It was lovely talking to you. I'm glad you enjoyed the film.
Thank you, you too. This was so much fun. I hope we get to meet in person one day and have a sit down
Oh,
conversation.
yes, I hope so too. I really hope so. You're based in Toronto?
Yeah, I live in Toronto, but I do travel occasionally for festivals. So I was in Utah earlier this year, and I've gone to Korea 3 times to cover film
Oh,
festivals there. So I'm hoping to do more film festival coverage in other Asian countries, like to Japan. And then recently I did Minikino Film Week, which is part of the Bali International Film Festival. I wasn't able to go because I did not have that money, but I did like virtual interviews with a couple of filmmakers for that. So I do hope to
mm,
intend. I would love to go to like Hong Kong and Taiwan and China to do like film
mm.
festival coverage there one day.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Hopefully we get to meet in person, get a coffee, talk.
Talk about Psycho Brothers and
Yes.
Pocahontas.
And Disney films, yeah. Yes.
All right, bye.
So much. Bye. Have a good
Thanks.
day.
You too. Thanks, Marguerite. Bye.